Have you ever felt a connection with a woman and found yourself wondering whether she felt it too, but you just couldn't quite figure it out? Today, I'm going to share 3 subtle signs that reveal she's already feeling desire. And believe me, the third sign happens right in front of most men, yet almost no one recognizes it soon enough. Hello and welcome back. I'm Mary Smith, host of the Mindful Senior Living YouTube channel. Let me tell you something. Many men sense these signals, yet struggle to understand the quiet, nearly invisible ways women communicate attraction once desire has started to develop. Before we get into these signs, there's something important I want you to understand. If you've ever replayed a conversation over and over in your mind, wondering whether a woman was interested in you, if you've ever walked away from an interaction only to later realize you may have missed something important, that doesn't mean you're clueless, socially awkward, or lacking confidence. It simply means that nobody ever taught you how to recognize the language of female desire. And that language is very different from what most men are accustomed to. You see, men and women often experience attraction in very different ways. For many men, attraction feels direct. You notice someone, you feel drawn toward them, and you want to act on that feeling quickly. But for many women, attraction develops in a slower, more subtle way. It's rarely a sudden rush forward. Instead, it's more like opening one small door at a time and waiting to see who notices. Women often assess the emotional environment first. They observe. They create opportunities. They look for safety, curiosity, comfort, and mutual interest before allowing desire to move forward. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice something fascinating. Women rarely announce their attraction loudly. They whisper it. Those whispers appear through body language, subtle behaviors, eye contact, vocal tone, and even the way she positions herself around you. They show up in moments so delicate that if you blink, you can easily miss them. But once you understand what you're looking for, something remarkable happens. You begin noticing patterns. Situations that once seemed confusing suddenly make sense. Moments that used to slip by unnoticed start standing out clearly. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Before we continue, though, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever looked back on a moment from years ago and suddenly realized that a woman might have liked you? Maybe it was a coworker who always seemed to find reasons to talk with you. Maybe it was someone at a social gathering who stayed near you a little longer than necessary. Maybe it was a woman who laughed at your jokes just a bit more than everyone else did. At the time, you dismissed it. You assumed she was simply being friendly. But later, you found yourself wondering. If that has ever happened to you, I want you to know you're not alone. Millions of men experience the exact same thing. And the reason isn't a lack of intelligence or awareness. It's simply that most men were never taught how to read these signals. So today, we're going to slow down and take a closer look at 3 of the clearest whispers of female desire. These aren't dramatic gestures. They're not bold declarations. They're subtle signals that reveal attraction has already begun to grow. And once you start recognizing them, your entire understanding of social interaction can change. Now, if you're already enjoying this discussion, take a moment to hit the like button. It helps more people discover these conversations and allows this channel to continue sharing thoughtful insights about relationships and human psychology. All right. Let's begin with the first signal. The first sign that a woman may already feel desire is something incredibly simple, yet surprisingly powerful. Touch. But not just any touch. I'm talking about those moments when a woman touches you without any obvious reason. This isn't an accidental brush of hands. It's not a quick tap on the shoulder like someone might give a colleague. It's something slightly different. It's intentional, even if she doesn't consciously realize she's doing it. In neuroscience, this is sometimes referred to as initiating contact. When attraction becomes active in the brain, the body often looks for subtle ways to reduce physical distance. touch becomes a bridge. Imagine this scenario. You're standing and talking with a woman. The conversation is flowing naturally. You're both laughing about something. As she responds, she lightly touches your arm. Then she leaves her hand there for a second longer than necessary. Not long enough to feel dramatic, just long enough for your mind to register that tiny pause. That extra second matters more than you might think, because that small pause often reflects comfort. And comfort is one of the earliest foundations of attraction. When someone feels uneasy around you, their body naturally maintains distance. Their gestures remain reserved, their movements stay guarded. But when a woman feels curious, when she feels comfortable, when attraction begins to emerge, the body's boundaries often relax, and touch starts appearing naturally. Sometimes it's extremely subtle. She may jokingly straighten your collar. She may tap your arm while laughing. She may gently guide you while moving through a crowd. None of these actions loudly announce desire, but together they create a pattern. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. A man once told me about an experience at a friend's birthday party. He had been speaking with a woman he had just met. The conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about music, shared travel stories, and laughed together easily. At one point, she reached over and brushed something invisible from his sleeve. He assumed it was simple politeness. Later in the conversation, she touched his arm again while laughing. Then she did it again while emphasizing a point. Each interaction lasted only a second. He barely noticed any of it. Months later, they met again through mutual friends. While discussing that first meeting, she admitted something surprising. She said, "I kept touching your arm because I was trying to see whether you felt the connection too." He had missed every signal, and this happens far more often than most people realize. Because many men are conditioned to notice only obvious signals, but attraction is usually quiet. Now, here's something fascinating from psychological research. Studies on interpersonal attraction show that people who feel romantic interest often mirror behaviors related to physical closeness. They lean in slightly. They orient their bodies toward the person they like. And yes, they initiate small touches. These behaviors are rarely calculated. They emerge naturally when the brain releases chemicals associated with bonding and attraction. Oxytocin, for example, is often called the bonding hormone. It increases feelings of trust and connection, and physical touch can help stimulate its release. So, when a woman lightly touches your shoulder or arm during a conversation, she may not even consciously understand why she's doing it. Her body simply feels comfortable. And comfort is often the doorway through which desire enters. Now, here's an important point to remember. One isolated gesture doesn't automatically mean attraction, but patterns tell stories. If a woman repeatedly finds reasons to touch you throughout a conversation, that's often a sign that she enjoys being around you and feels drawn toward your presence. And if you've experienced something like that before, I'd like you to do something interesting. Write the word touch in the comments. Not just because it helps the algorithm, although it certainly does, but because it encourages you to reflect on your own experiences. Sometimes the most powerful insights begin with awareness, and awareness changes the way we see the world. Now, let's move on to the second signal, because this one is even more revealing, and it lives in her eyes. Now, let's move on to the second sign, because this one often reveals far more than people realize. It's found in her eyes. Not just whether she looks at you, but how she looks at you. Eye contact is one of the strongest forms of nonverbal communication we possess. And when a woman begins feeling genuine attraction, her eyes often start communicating emotions long before her words ever do. Most people make eye contact during conversation. That's normal. But attraction changes the quality of that eye contact. It becomes softer, longer, more intentional, and sometimes a little harder to forget. Think about the difference between someone casually looking at you while speaking and someone who seems completely present with you. The first feels ordinary. The second feels different. You notice it immediately. A woman who feels drawn to you will often hold eye contact just a little longer than social convention requires. Then something interesting happens. She may briefly look away. Not because she's disinterested. Sometimes it's the exact opposite. The emotional intensity becomes noticeable enough that she momentarily breaks contact before returning again. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as approach and retreat behavior. A person feels attracted. They move emotionally closer. Then they create a tiny amount of distance before reconnecting again. It's a natural rhythm, and you'll often see it in the eyes first. Imagine sitting across from a woman at a coffee shop. You're talking about life experiences, family, travel, dreams for the future. As you speak, she maintains steady eye contact, not forced, not intense, just focused. Then you say something personal, something meaningful. For a brief moment, her expression softens. She looks down, smiles slightly, then looks back at you again. That tiny sequence tells a story. She's emotionally engaged. And emotional engagement is one of the strongest indicators that attraction may be developing. Let me share another example. A man once described a conversation he had during a community event. The room was crowded. People were talking everywhere. Yet every time he looked across the room, he noticed the same woman glancing in his direction. Whenever their eyes met, she smiled. Not a large smile, just enough to acknowledge the connection. At first, he assumed it was coincidence. Then it happened again, and again. Eventually, she approached him. Months later, after they had started dating, she admitted that she had been hoping he would notice her interest long before she walked over. Her eyes had been sending signals the entire evening. He simply hadn't understood them yet. This happens constantly, because many men expect attraction to be obvious, but women frequently communicate through subtle invitations rather than direct declarations, and eye contact is one of the most common invitations of all. Research into social bonding has repeatedly shown that prolonged eye contact increases feelings of closeness and emotional connection. In fact, studies suggest that maintaining meaningful eye contact can increase feelings of intimacy even between complete strangers. Why? Because eye contact creates attention, and attention creates connection. When a woman repeatedly gives you focused attention, she's often communicating that you matter in that moment, that she's curious, interested, engaged. And curiosity is frequently the beginning of desire. Now here's where it becomes even more interesting. Attraction doesn't only influence how often she looks at you, it can influence her pupils as well. When people become emotionally stimulated or interested, their pupils often dilate slightly. Of course, nobody is suggesting you stare into someone's eyes trying to measure pupil size. That's not the point. The point is that attraction affects the body in ways that are difficult to fake, and the eyes are often where those changes become visible first. Another thing to watch for is what psychologists sometimes call visual return. This happens when she looks away but keeps coming back to you. You're in a group conversation. She talks to others, she engages with the room, yet her eyes continue returning to you, again and again, almost as if an invisible thread keeps pulling her attention back. That pattern matters, because attention follows interest, and sustained interest is rarely random. Now let me be clear. One glance means nothing. 2 glances might mean nothing. But repeated attention over time creates a pattern, and patterns tell the truth far more reliably than isolated moments ever can. If she consistently seeks eye contact, if her gaze lingers, if she seems fully present when speaking with you. Those are often signs that something deeper may be developing beneath the surface. And here's the fascinating part. Many women aren't even consciously aware they're doing it. Their attention naturally gravitates toward the person who captures their curiosity. Their eyes simply follow where their emotions want to go. Now, before we move to the third and most overlooked sign, I want you to think about your own experiences. Have you ever noticed a woman repeatedly looking in your direction? Have you ever felt that strange moment when eye contact seemed to last a little longer than normal? Many men brush these moments aside, but sometimes those moments carry more meaning than they realize. If you've experienced something like that before, write "eyes" in the comments. It's always fascinating to hear how many people recognize these signals only after someone points them out. Now we're ready for the third sign. And this one may be the most powerful of all because it hides behind something most men completely misunderstand. It's not touch. It's not eye contact. It's attention. But not just any attention. The kind of attention a woman gives when she genuinely wants to remain connected to your world. We'll dive into that next. Now let's talk about the third sign. And honestly, this is the signal that most men completely overlook. Not because it's difficult to see, but because it often gets mistaken for simple friendliness. The sign is attention. More specifically, consistent and intentional attention. When a woman feels attraction, she doesn't just enjoy being around you. She becomes interested in your world. She starts paying attention to details that most people would forget. Things you've mentioned only once, stories you've told in passing, preferences you never expected anyone to remember. And that's where things become interesting. You see, attention is one of the most valuable resources any person has. We live in a world full of distractions. Everyone is busy. Everyone has something competing for their focus. So when someone repeatedly directs attention toward you, that means something. Imagine mentioning your favorite author during a conversation. A week later, she brings it up again. Or perhaps you casually mention an important meeting at work. A few days later, she asks how it went. Not because she had to, not because it was polite, because she remembered. That kind of memory is often connected to emotional investment. People remember what matters to them. And when attraction begins growing, details about you start becoming important. Let me tell you about a man who shared an experience that perfectly demonstrates this. He met a woman during a volunteer project. They spent several afternoons working together. Nothing dramatic happened, no obvious flirting, no grand romantic gestures, just conversations. One day, he mentioned that his father had been recovering from surgery. It was only a brief comment. He barely thought about it afterward. 2 weeks later, she asked him how his father was doing. He was surprised, not because of the question itself, but because she remembered. Out of all the conversations she had likely experienced during those 2 weeks, she had held on to that detail. And that detail mattered, because attention reveals priority. When a woman starts investing mental and emotional energy into remembering pieces of your life, she's often becoming emotionally connected to you. Now here's another version of this signal. She creates reasons to continue the conversation. Maybe she sends you an article related to something you discussed. Maybe she texts you after seeing something that reminded her of you. Maybe she asks follow-up questions that keep the interaction moving forward. Notice what's happening. She's maintaining the thread of connection. She's keeping the door open. And people rarely do that consistently unless they enjoy the connection. Psychologists often refer to this as sustained engagement. When we become interested in someone, our brains naturally seek opportunities to reconnect. We look for reasons to continue the interaction. We create pathways back into conversation. And attraction frequently amplifies this behavior. Now, does that mean every thoughtful message automatically signals romantic interest? Of course not. Human behavior is more complex than that. But once again, we're looking for patterns, not isolated moments. Patterns. If she remembers details, if she follows up on things you've shared, if she consistently initiates or extends conversations, if she seems genuinely curious about your experiences, those behaviors often point towards something deeper than casual friendliness, because curiosity is rarely random. Curiosity is investment, and investment is often where attraction begins to take shape. Here's something else many men don't realize. A woman who feels desire often wants access to your thoughts, not just your schedule, not just your hobbies, your thoughts. She'll ask questions that go beyond surface-level topics. She'll want to know how you see the world, what motivates you, what excites you, what challenges you. Why? Because attraction isn't only physical, it's emotional. And emotional attraction grows through understanding. The more she learns about who you are beneath the surface, the more connected she may begin to feel. That's why some of the strongest signs of attraction don't look romantic at all. They look like curiosity, attention, engagement, presence. And that's exactly why so many men miss them. They're waiting for something obvious. Meanwhile, attraction is quietly revealing itself through consistent interest. Now let's bring everything together. The first sign was touch. Those small moments of physical contact that often signal comfort and growing attraction. The second sign was eye contact. The lingering looks, the repeated glances, the silent conversations happening without words. And the third sign was attention. The desire to stay connected, to remember details, to keep learning about you, to remain present in your world. Individually, each signal can be subtle, but together, they create a picture. And that picture often reveals far more than words ever could, because attraction rarely arrives with an announcement. More often, it appears through small behaviors repeated over time. That's why awareness matters. The more you understand these signals, the less likely you are to miss meaningful opportunities for connection. And perhaps most importantly, you stop relying on guesswork. You begin seeing people more clearly. You become more present, more observant, more confident in your ability to understand what's happening beneath the surface. Before we finish, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 3 signs surprised you the most? Have you ever realized much later that a woman had been showing one of these signals and you completely missed it? Share your experience in the comments. I read them, and many of the stories people share are incredibly insightful. And if you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more conversations about psychology, relationships, and human behavior. Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.